War Thunder Update 2.29 Sons of Attila is here on the dev server, so this is a quick rundown of all the new stuff that's relevant to AirRB. As always, keep in mind things can and do and hopefully change before release, and nothing you see here is final. I try not to miss anything, but I make no guarantees. Of course, gonna start with the new planes, and by the way, the tech trees have been reshuffled around and costs have been adjusted like they talked about in their roadmap post. I'm not going to get into it too much, but the big thing you'll notice, apart from reduced research costs, is now every tree above rank 5 is only 2 rows before you get to the next rank. There are a lot of new folders, which don't necessarily contain a logical progression of vehicles, but that's what they had to do to make everything fit. We start with F-16C Block 50, which comes after the F-16As in the tree. The F-16As have been folded, and they've also swapped positions, so it looks to me like you will have to own the Block 10 to grind the Block 50, which is pretty scummy if you ask me. F-16C Block 50 gets a new F-110 engine, which is considerably more powerful than the F-100 on existing F-16s, but the airframe does way more, so maneuverability wise it's not quite as nimble as the Block 10, but the increased engine power more than makes up for the weight. I haven't had time to test it too much, but from what I've heard this is the best dogfighter in the game. It's missing flares right now. It should have 120 instead of 160, and I can't show the cockpit or the Viper demo team skin yet since neither of those are finished. In terms of weapons, it has the AIM-9L, which it gets stock, it has AIM-7M, and it has the full suite of air-to-ground weapons, including AGM-65D and the Lightning targeting pod. It's got HMD and a new radar, which isn't finished, but it gets the APG-68V7 radar, which should be considerably better than the APG-66. Overall, it's shaping up to be a very well-rounded and very potent Viper for both air and ground players. Germany gets nothing, no new planes, and no changes to their MiG-29, so we come to the Soviet, or I should say Russian tree, with the MiG-29SMT 919. This will probably get its own video, but this edition is kind of baffling. So the airframe is fatter and chunkier than the 913 and 912 on account of this giant ugly fuel spine, and the engines have the same thrust, which is historical, so flight performance wise it is the worst MiG-29. Radar is the same radar used by the Yak-41, which is better than the base MiG-29 radar. For weapons, it gets R73, which it gets stock. It doesn't even have R60M at all. It gets R27ER, and it gets R27ET. This missile loadout is absurdly strong. It's way overtuned, and it's looking like this plane is going to be the only thing I want to play this patch if it releases like this. So hopefully they make some changes, because I really don't want that to be the case. They did say it's going to 12.3 with the Block 50, so cool I guess, but that doesn't fix the problem. So hope you have the Soviet tree ground out, because if you don't, good luck. And no, of course they're not adding any of the weapons to the existing MiG-29s, they want you to unlock and stock grind a brand new one. Britain gets the Sea Harrier FRS.1 early in the tech tree, basically the same as the old FRS.1, except it gets 2 AIM-9Ls instead of 4, but sits at a lower battle rating of 10.3. So it's a Harrier with 9Ls and flares, pretty straightforward and not much to talk about here. If you get some down tiers to 9.3, this thing will absolutely smoke anything that doesn't have flares, but on the other hand, 10.7 is getting a lot of down tiers at the moment. Both Sea Harriers did get a new cockpit, and early Spitfires also got a new cockpit, which is really nice to see. Japan got nothing, China got nothing, Italy got nothing so far, but there is an Italian AV-8B in the files and also in the localization, so that will probably make its way into this patch. France also got nothing, but the Super Etendard is in the localization, and given that the tree is broken after the old Etendard, it definitely looks like it's going to be added. Sweden got nothing, and Israel got the F-16D Block 40 Barak 2. This thing is of course very chunky, and for air-to-air it only gets AIM-9L. It doesn't get Pythons, and it doesn't get Sparrows, which I was really hoping it would get since Israel really needs to get some BVR going at top tier. It also doesn't get Mavericks for some reason, so overall this is just kind of a steaming pile of disappointment for the Israeli tree, and most of you can probably just skip this one unless something major changes. We got a new map. The Rocky Pillars map looks really great and has some interesting terrain. They didn't specify it's an arcade-only map, so it should be coming to AirRB, which is great news. I'm a big fan of it, and it's one of my favorite things in the patch. In terms of weapons, there aren't any new air-to-air missiles, but the R-73 did get its promised guidance tweaks. The thrust vectoring angle has doubled, and it now uses this table, which gives it multiple stages of guidance. I was hoping this would fix its guidance problems, but in practice it seems to have made it even more goofy. It's still failing and missing and spinning off, and you can kinda tell when it switches guidance stages, which messes with it and makes its flight not very smooth. It still definitely needs quite a bit of work, so who knows, maybe the fourth implementation of this missile is the one we're looking for. Also, they cut its gate width down even more, which means it's going to have an even harder time seeing flares and will therefore be even more flare resistant. Flare resistance is often weird on the dev server, so wait for the live server to make judgment on this one, but you might want to be careful around it from close range on patch day. They did add the R73 to the Su-25T and Su-39 already, so rip bozo anyone who redeemed the Su-25BM, but for now it's just on those Su-25s and the MiG-29SMT. The other MiG-29s and Yak-41 don't have it. For game mechanics, they added new voice warning sounds, so all F-16s got Betty and the Soviet MiG-29s got Rita, but the German MiG-29 did not. If you're not a fan of Betty and Rita, you can mute them with this new volume slider, which also contains the RWR volume level. Having these on their own slider is definitely very nice, but hopefully they split it even further into separate RWR and voice warning sliders. And speaking of RWR, at last we have the long-awaited RWR rework, which is very much a work in progress. The short version of it is overall RWRs show a lot more information now. Some show the name for each threat, some have these lights at the bottom which show the type of threat and how it's interacting with your plane, and some have both. The RWR rework also supports CW alerts, so you should be able to tell when a SAR missile is possibly guiding towards your plane, but this is very buggy at the moment and it doesn't have its own sound yet. I will be making an RWR guide once it's in more of a final state and I have an understanding of how everything works, but that will probably be after the update release because I feel like a lot is going to change between now and then, but we'll have to see. I think that's pretty much everything. For me, this patch is kind of a mixed bag so far, but I'm curious to know your initial impressions. I'll probably do a video on the new F-16s and new F-16 flight models and a video on the MiG-29SMT, but if there's anything else you want me to cover that you think deserves its own video, let me know. Coming out on Discord, and thanks for watching.